Okay, so nice easy start, nice and gentle, just standing comfortably and rubbing your hands together. This is a self-massage exercise to begin with, warming your fingers up a little bit and then tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder. And you up. Onto your back. Around your hips. Light onto your belly. And then the upper part of your chest. Excuse me a moment, I'll get an echo here. So let me just see if I can sort that out. Okay, so just giving yourself time to settle in. Just a little bit aware of what's happening in your body as you stand. Having your feet directly below your hips, maybe turned out very slightly but not too much. A couple of slow gentle breaths and just try and get a sense of settling down through the centre of your body. It's a little bit forwards, hips dropping back, and bringing your attention to that middle part of your body and just starting to turn gently there. Starting off with quite small movements, just to get a sense of what's happening in your body, posture, the movements. One of the characteristics for me of the postures that we take, and we'll look a bit more closely at that in a few moments, but is that we just have a posture that allows for a degree of space in the body for movement. Tai Chi tries to create an environment, a landscape within the body where we can move without actually having to fight against ourselves, without having to strain, finding the spaces for the movement, just learning to, in a way, sort of direct that movement through the path of least resistance, whether we're thinking about movements with the joints, the muscles, for instance, slightly more subtle things like breathing and circulation, and ultimately this sense of settling in and feeling the underlying movement, the underlying pulse that governs all the other movements. Really, they're all just outcomes of the same movement. We can begin to appreciate how the posture works in our favour. Very gently, just if you see my knees are slightly curved, I'll pull my knees back. You can try this without straining, just until you feel your knees tighten up. And actually, what happens then for me is my whole body tightens up. When I can release in hips and knees, this general sense of tightness and stiffness beginning to dissolve away in my body begins to make itself felt. So we don't want to go into a very deep stance at this point, but we do want a stance that begins that process of release, and it will feel quite strong probably in the muscles of your legs. And that releasing feeling in our hips does actually help to increase the space for movement, certainly in the centre of our body. Beginning to feel the patterns of movement, of expansion and contraction in the big muscles of the upper part of the body. And again, as we become aware of that, so it becomes more subtle. It's as though, having noticed something, we then kind of increase the magnification of that awareness, like looking through a microscope at a leaf. And first of all, you see the leaf, and then if you look at a magnifying glass or a microscope, you see it in greater and greater detail. So awareness and intention are important aspects of the art. We're not trying to force our body into a position or movement that isn't correct for it, so this is not mind over matter. But we begin to recognize that there are three interrelated aspects, faces to this art. One is to do with the body physically, of course, posture, structure, movement. Another is to do with mind, a quietening of our awareness that enables us to bring more attention into our body, and with that, a sense of intentionality, deliberate movements. And finally, the movement itself, the flow of the energy, moving through the physical body, directed by mind in some ways, but also these three elements are interrelated. It's not a linear thing. Sometimes an awareness of the movement is a good way to focus our attention, for instance. So the benefits are felt in all those areas. Now just turning your hands palm forwards, raise them up a little bit, trying to find a position for your arms where they can comfortably rest. So not too high, not too far from your body. And this is something we want to familiarise ourselves with, this feeling that whatever posture we're in, it's working the body, and we can probably feel certain muscles and certain parts of the body beginning to work a bit harder. But it shouldn't feel strained. It shouldn't feel like we're having to sort of grit our teeth and strain for the movement. And if you find, for instance, that your shoulders are tightened up, maybe just try lowering your arms a little. And then letting your hands drop down. 1 foot forward to keep the width of your step and step about the same in length, and push gently against the ground. So one of the things that we want to build in these arts is an awareness of how our body moves as one unit. In fact, of how those three elements of body, mind and energy are really one unit. And an important part of that is to recognise where the movement comes from. And it comes from the connection between your feet and the ground. So if you had a pile of boxes in front of you, for instance, and you wanted to move them, if you were to push on the top box, then the whole pile would probably topple over. So you wouldn't do that. You would push on the lowest box and slide the whole unit around. And in the same way, when we make this change of perspective and and recognise that we're able to move from the ground, then it's more likely that our body maintains its alignment, maintains that sense of our body as one unit. And then on the other side, I think this is one of the big takeaways from practicing arts like Tai Chi and Qigong is this awareness of our body as one unit, as something that's drawn together, of body and mind collected, gathered, and there's a quietness and a calmness that begins to be associated with that, and a lot of it is to do with intention. We can easily find ourselves moving in a very fragmented way, but we can also remind ourselves not to do that, how it can feel when we're moving as one unit. Shake out. So feet are below our hips, so our hips feel supported, and if our hips are supported, that will support our shoulders and upper body better. You could do it measure it from the outside of the foot or the inside of the foot or anywhere in between. So try and get a sense for what is working for you at the moment, rather than thinking it's got to be like this. We're all slightly different structurally, and also we're all at different stages in the process. So what's comfortable, what's right now, may well be different by the end of the session or in a few weeks' time or something like that. And just do this little exercise, rocking your weight forwards and backwards in. So I'm pivoting from my ankles. Try not to lead with your shoulders. So feel your weight moving forwards and backwards in your feet. When you go too far, that's going to happen. So just moderate the movement a little bit. If I demonstrate this with this pole, imagine this going up through the center of my body, from the crown of my head downwards. Then you see, it's the whole body moving. I'm not leaning forwards or backwards or anything like that from the hips. Just a gentle little movement. And one of the really important elements that we're trying to become aware of and trying to build is that somewhere in the midst of this movement, there's a central point where, in theory, what I could do is take my hands away, and that wouldn't happen. Of course, in practice, it's much more difficult to find that. But if you think of this as being like your spine, your pelvis, the bones of your legs, then imagine the tendons and the ligaments and the muscles associated with the skeleton acting a bit like the guy ropes of a tent. Then between them, you can just come to rest a little bit with the feeling that gravity is working through your body, drawing your weight down into your legs, drawing your centre of gravity down into your legs, rather than this feeling of being slightly pulled forwards or backwards. It becomes a struggle at that point. Now, in fact, what we're looking to build into here, and I'm going to exaggerate slightly so you can see what's going on. This is actually a very subtle movement. Depending on where your weight is at the moment in your foot, you might want to just move your weight forwards. The focal point should be just behind the ball of your foot. I've gone a little bit further, and you can see I'm tilting forwards. This will make me begin to stiffen up to avoid being pulled forwards. But what I want to do is just to get that feeling of droppings through my hips, lower back and buttocks, just almost like I've been out for a walk and I'm just resting on a wall or a fence or something like that, just allowing my weight to drop. As I do this, I want to just allow my pelvis to adjust so it keeps my centre of gravity over my foot, in fact over that point just behind the ball of the foot. A gentle lengthening through your back and your spine when you do this. Don't feel stuck in this position because your body has to condition for it, but it's an interesting posture because it's very settled, it's very aligned, so that feeling of stillness, of calmness begins to make itself felt. And yet at the same time, All I have to do is move forwards just a little bit and I can take a step. So it's a posture that combines stillness and movement. You're very settled in this posture, or as close to it as you can comfortably get. And yet at the same time, there's almost enough energy to take a step. And this is typical of Tai Chi, that rather than seeing things like stillness and movement or expansion and contraction as opposed to each other, we find a harmony between them. So that harmony is one of the things that we can think of developing. We can have the intention to sustain that. Now, just allow your hips to drop back a little bit more. Don't go down too deeply. You don't want to strain your knees. And then just feel how your legs reach a point of compression where they push you up again. And then at the top of the movement, gravity draws you down. So what we have now is this rhythm of sinking down of the body, rooting down, contracting into the ground, and then the rise in movement coming up out of that, through your legs, expanding through the upper part of your body, and then down. And this is a principal source of that pulse, that rhythm that I mentioned earlier. And this is one of the most important energetic cycles in these arts. There's many forms of energy in the body. The energy we get from food, breathing, all of those are significant. But some that's very typical of Tai Chi and Qigong is what we might think of as this kinetic energy that is facilitated by our posture, that allows gravity to work downwards through our bodies, and so we get that sense of a rise in movement coming up from the ground. This is called rooting down. Rooting down is a very key physical principle in Tai Chi because it allows our centre of gravity to drop, and that gives us extra stability. But as I've just explained, it also is key to the energetics of the art. And because we're paying attention and because there's a degree of intentionality here, it furthers that sense of our thoughts being centred, being grounded. You may find that your breathing, for instance, just naturally begins to harmonise with this movement. Some of the time at least. It might not do that all the time. That's fine. You might want to take an extra breath or a longer or a shorter breath at some point. Don't force a breathing pattern. But it's quite natural for the body to begin to harmonise. And then just sinking down, curl your hands under as though you have a ball cradled in your arms. And as you push up, that expansion, push your elbows out. Turn your hands over as though they're resting on the ball. Get your hips drop and your arms follow. So this is the exercise rooting down, pushing up. One of the common images that we use in Tai Chi to help to really cultivate this mind-body connection is that we're moving through water. This starts to encourage a particular way of moving that encourages the flow, but also because there's a sense of slight resistance there, a fluid resistance, it also encourages a very subtle conditioning of the body. Other images that help us with the flow of the movement, so your body's being very gently massaged internally, or bathed internally. And as always, the images are there to help us develop the movements. So if an image isn't working for you at this point, it's not a massive failure. Different things, again, work at different times. Don't feel you have to sort of chase an image to get it right. But it can be very interesting to note how our body responds to images. If it doesn't work for everybody. And if it does work, how different images can produce different responses. So rooting down, keeping that movement with your hips sinking down, pushing up, turn your fingers out, and this time let your arms get pushed away from your body, drawing your hands up and then down. This is the exercise of the wild goose. So one very clear image with this one is this image of the bird in flight, which may convey qualities of smoothness of movement, of grace, of fluidity of movement. An alternative image might be, again, as though you're in water and you have a small ball underneath the palm of each hand, and again, as you sink down, you're pressing the ball down, and then as the balls start to push up, you just allow them to come up very slowly. Beginning to feel that connection, feet up through your legs to your hips, your hips through your upper body to your shoulders, and then outwards into your arms and your fingers, trying to remind yourself of that process, that order, that chain of movement that really relies heavily on the connection with the ground. One more time. Then just letting your hands drop down and cross in front of your belly, and again, expansion, pushing your arms out. This time, intention is to just draw your fingers around in a smooth circle. This is the exercise parting the clouds. I mentioned earlier that not every image will work for you. This is one that for quite a while didn't really mean very much until it just occurred to me one day that when we have a cloudy day and then the sun comes out from behind the clouds, that change from something that might be almost a little bit oppressive at times to something more expansive, brighter, warmer perhaps, and how that feels in mind and body. I'll do one more of these, and we're going to go back to the first of them, rooting down, and build these three movements into a little sequence. So first of all, rooting down, and take your time as you change over. Don't feel you have to rush. From the bottom, just turning your fingers out in the wild goose. And from this point, letting your hands drop down and parting the clouds. Don't struggle to remember this. It's not going to be the end of the world if you find that you're getting it in the wrong order. But obviously we want to try to do this, and we can begin to just feel very subtle changes from one movement to another, changes of imagery, although some of them will remain the same, the one of moving through water as a constant, for instance. The changes of imagery, changes in the effects that we feel within the body, different patterns, expansion and contraction, different pathways of movements. Noticing those as the start of a process that means that we can begin to bring an intentionality to those. Tai Chi and Qigong are described as internal arts. Not that we're unconcerned with what's happening externally, but one of the progressions that we gradually become aware of is that rather than the external movements guiding us to an awareness of what's happening within the body in the way that I've just described, there's just a natural progression to a point where it's the other way around, where to produce a movement, we initiate, if you like, the movement internally through that process of sinking down and pushing up, through that awareness of patterns within the upper body, as the building blocks of the bigger movements. And this is how we begin to feel able to gently influence the physical movements through awareness and intention. Again, not forcing the body into anything. This little sequence just helps to build that awareness. You may notice that parts of the body feeling a bit tight or a bit stiff. Remember that idea of beginning to just direct the movement around those areas? Think of them as being like rocks in a riverbed being slowly dissolved and eroded by the flow of the water. Sometimes that helps to just open up those areas. One more time, parting the clouds, sinking down, and then from this position, come back again to this higher position. See how that feels now. And shake out. So we can begin to bring awareness and intention into the movements to help to build them. But again, it's not mind over matter, and nor is it a suggestion that all we have to do is think correctly. We still have to engage with the pull of gravity through our body. We have to engage with what's going on physically in our body. It might be that image I suggested of the rock in the riverbed will help to release an area, but it's not going to work if you're out of line with the pull of gravity, or if you've got a knee with arthritis or something like that. It's not some kind of magical cure. It can help you to work more gently with those areas, but I'm not suggesting that it's all in the mind as some people would put it. So once again in this position, and once again sinking down and pushing up. So we're going to use this movement, focusing your attention on one side of your body as you push up, feel the expansion and let that push your arm up. Just a little above your head, winding your arms around so you're plucking something from a tree and pull down. Take a moment to feel the weight of your arm hanging from your shoulders, weight of your body hanging down through your hips, and then do the same thing on the other side. This is Dragon Plucks the Stars from the Sky. Again, just feel what's happening in your centre and your hips. And that awareness will help to stop you rushing. This exercise can be very indicative of something that I think we all get in our culture, which is this need to get on, this need to rush. And we can easily find ourselves, for instance, as one arm descends, starts to get almost to the bottom, and this other hand is wanting to move. But we just bring our attention to our centre and then push up. So in this way, the details of posture and movement help to cultivate this quality of calmness, an aware stillness within the body, one that we associate strongly with the central part of the body and that feeling of it dropping towards the ground. Once again, we can think of terms like grounded and centered as being very real physical qualities. And we begin to cultivate what in Tai Chi is poetically referred to as the stillness within the movement. Again, I feel that quality of stillness is one of the important benefits of the art. Now, sinking down, then coming up to that higher position, bring your hands so that they're lightly touching the side of the centre of your body. After the legs and feet in the way that I've described, this central area between your hips and pelvis and your waist is a key part of the body. It's this part of the body we want to drop towards the ground. As you'll see in a moment, when we move in this part of the body, we affect the whole body. It becomes an important focal point. And it's a part of the body that we begin to associate with that quality of stillness. So we have somewhere to bring our attention to, a kind of place in the body, place of stillness, from which we can just observe and then begin to influence the rest of the body. So this next movement, pushing your hands up, lengthening through your back and your spine, as though you're pressing against the low ceiling. Bring your hands back down. You're not going up and down in the hips at this point, but you come back to that centre part of the body. And when you do, just make sure that again you're allowing your hips to drop down, so we've still got that sense of movement to our body. And because there's a downward movement, there will be an upward movement. So that's a subtle internal process now. And then pushing your hands out to the sides. And as you do, just turning your hips and your waist so you redirect your arms. Come back and again just touching the side of your hips. Turn in the other direction. Rotating your arms so they're palms out and back, and then facing forwards and pushing out. So this is pushing in 4 directions. When your arms rotate, try and feel that that rotation comes from your shoulders with this movement. And then when we do the turn in, we feel the rotation in our hips, spiraling up our spine and out through our arms. The centre part of the body, sometimes described as being like the hub of a wheel, which when the hub turns, the whole wheel moves, but the hub itself is locked into the frame of the vehicle. So the hub needs to remain still to allow the movement. And just beginning to recognise that stillness is a necessary element in moving well. I feel that we're encouraging a development of our nervous system that allows that return of our attention to our centre and the ground to work more smoothly, so that later in the day we may find that we have that wonderful facility to just touch a sense of stillness and Remember that image of moving through water, if that's helpful. Another image I sometimes have with this particular exercise is to imagine that with the sideways pushes, I'm trying to stretch out a big elastic band. And again, I'm push out, not just with the arms, but with the whole body expanding, and then just allow the elastic band to contract. And beginning to feel that that expansion and contraction centers itself in the center of the body, like a ball, expanding, contracting. And of course, if there were a ball there, if you pump up a ball or something like that, it expands in all directions. So we still have that all-important connection downwards into the ground, as well as the upwards and the outwards. Final time, pushing out to the sides. And then bring your hands back in and bring one hand to your belly, just below your navel, so covering the center there. Drop the other hand down, pushing out, maybe just feeling that expansion through the center again, and then down. Push out. And down. So it's a semicircle. This is called circling palms. So you're running your hand around the inside of an old stone arch that you might find in a church doorway. And this time, when your hand reaches that top position, turn in and just feel the movement underneath your hand that's placed on your belly. Change over, and the moving hand is now on your belly, and the other hand started to move, trying to feel that expansion out sideways. Remember, weight forwards a little bit, hips dropping back. Try not to stiffen up in your knees, but if you need to rest, maybe shake your legs out, then do so. It's a subtle but strong stance. And then add in the turn. We want to feel that more and more of our body engages in the movement, not just certain muscles, but the whole body right into our bones. And then once again, drop your hands down. And again, give your legs a little bit of a shake. The final two movements in this parallel stance show how when the center rotates horizontally, that also has a massive influence on the body. Earlier, I was talking about bringing the weight forwards and just letting the hips drop back a little bit. But now, just very gently, being careful of your back, let your pelvis tilt forwards a little bit and then backwards. So now, again, I'm exaggerating. See how my hips are going forwards and then going back. This means that our upper body begins to angle because of the movement in the center of the body, but because hips are going backwards and forwards, our center of gravity stays over our legs. So Again, nice and easy with these next two exercises. As you push your hips back, to sink down a little bit. To come back upright, just let gravity pull your hips down. Try not to stiffen in your shoulders and push up. And then again, so feeling the connection from hips to shoulders and how that helps you come upright without a strain. So it makes it a very important process, coming upright without getting into a fight with the pull of gravity. And this time, your arms follow. This is rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. A gentle extension to the spine and your arms and fingers. And just recall that feeling of space within your body that hopefully you felt earlier. And one of the really important intentions is to maintain that space, and that can help us not to move too far, to not overextend in an exercise like this. Your range of movement gradually increases your body conditions. So rowing a boat in the middle of the lake, and then this time bring your hands palm down, turn, then push your hips back so your hands go forwards, swinging across, letting your hips drop down, turn back to the front. Change direction. This is polishing the table. Again, being careful not to overdo the movement. I'm doing it quite big, so hopefully you can see what's going on. From the back, notice how my hips push back and then come across. And then the hips drop down and I turn back to the front. Once again, the significance of the center part of your body and that connection to the ground. One more in each direction. And again, just standing. Shake out. So we slowly develop a posture and an awareness of that posture that is less strained, less in conflict with the pull of gravity, more centered, more grounded. This area of the center of the body, known as the lower dantian, is also seen energetically as the center of the energy. And it's that point, as I said earlier, that we can bring our attention to just find that all important little moment of stillness and calmness in say a stressful situation. My first teacher used to say to us many years ago that we would find ourselves standing like this in supermarket queues. It's an interesting idea that we can begin to carry that quality of stillness with us. In order to be able to do that, we have to learn how to move and maintain, if possible, or at least come back to those qualities. So the next stance that we use, again, starting in the parallel stance, turn one foot out, step forward with the other. You should be able to see the space between my legs there. And once again, beginning to transfer your weight. Don't overdo this. It's a really good exercise for conditioning our legs. It's also a really useful exercise if you have mobility problems, to maintain the transfer of your weight in a safe, grounded way. You're not getting all your weight back at this point. Again, if I show you with the pole, you can see where it's going is sort of part of the way. In practice, what we're getting at this point is something like 60% of our weight in the front leg, up to 70% in the back leg. But maintaining your posture, and what you may find is that you sort of leant forwards a little bit here, and there's a moment of just settling in. Maybe you've leant back and a moment of settling in. So each time our weight lands in one leg, we have an opportunity to reset a little bit. Now if you go forwards and then push your back knee in, you'll feel your body shift just a little bit. And then when you go back and raise the front toes again, there's that slight shift. Again with the pole, I'll show you, my heels on the ground, I get to about here, I push my knee in, my body just shifts a little bit. Likewise with the toes. So we gradually begin to find these qualities of the root and the stability that comes with that, more over one leg. Just again, be careful of your knees. You want your weight to drop down through your legs. And that will enable us just to take a step. You bring the front foot in, push out, you put the heel down, lower the ball of the foot. Notice I've got my foot slightly turned out now. Move your weight in, settle in. Same thing with the back foot, you bring the foot in, but it's the ball of the foot that goes down first. Being careful to place the foot and to gently press the foot into the floor, to plant the foot before you commit your weight. So imagine you're taking a step onto thin ice and you want to just check that the ice isn't going to break. Or what you might do if you're in the sea on a soft seabed, on sand or something like that, you'd want to make sure you had the correct sort of positioning, that your foot was stable before you committed yourself. You don't have to lift the leg up at that point. You can either leave the leg up in the air, or if you're feeling a bit kind of stiff and wobbly, put the toes down, give your body a chance to settle. You'll see me do that sometimes. Did it then. Sometimes you feel you need to do that, don't you? Shake out. So let's try that with the other foot forwards. Turn the back foot out. When it's fixed step, when we're not moving the feet at all, then the front toes point straight forwards and as much as possible facing forwards. Now, if you're slightly angled outwards and you try and make that adjustment and you feel as though your knee's twisting up or your back's twisting up, just allow yourself to be at that slight angle. It's not ideal, but it's not a massive problem, and it's better than straining your knees or your back. At some point in these classes, I will talk about how we make that adjustment. But like all these subtle adjustments in Tai Chi, it takes time for the body to condition for them. So we should never be in a hurry. These are subtly strong movements in the body that often engage the body in different ways to the ways that we normally move, and that has to be respected. So now just raising your toes and your heel, feeling that little bit of a shift. A key part of the body, as always, is the centre of the body. If your pelvis feels level, you're more likely to maintain that upright stance than, say, if your pelvis is tilted over. And then stepping in, back out and planting the foot. Feeling that connection to the ground. And then taking a few steps through, so go forwards or backwards depending on where you have the room. Take your time. Opportunity just to reflect on the process of walking for its own sake. And then going back, forwards, depending on whether you've done before. again, shake out. Have your right foot forward, so mirror my movement. So we bring our arms and upper body back into the movement now. And this is quite useful. We don't walk down the road thinking about every single step. So we want to retain that awareness and the intention that goes with it without having it at the front of our mind. You might be talking to a friend or something like that. I sometimes describe it as being like, you know, having your shoes done up. You're walking down the road, you're chatting, you just somehow you notice that your shoelaces come undone, so you bend down, do it up, carry on. You don't have to think about it because you've worn shoes enough. So if you practice those last exercises, eventually this becomes a sort of natural approach, that sense of moving from the ground, keeping that sense of connection and everything that goes with it. So starting with your weight in your back foot, push forwards, and just as you arrive in the front foot, let your arms swing through, and then same idea going back. Most of the time your arms following what's happening in the hips, but they swing through as you settle into the foot each time. A nice smooth wave-like movement through your back and your shoulders and your arms. This is fisherman castanet. Again, you can imagine moving through water. It's a great exercise to begin that process that I talked about of developing up a kind of background awareness, a background intentionality to move from the ground. Be aware of your weight, what's happening in your legs and your hips. Whilst at the same time very much aware of what's going on in your upper body and what's going on around you. That sense of moving through water, sense of the feel of the air against your skin. This time, when you come into your front leg turn to your left, away from the foot, and let that swing your arms out, dropping them down as you move your weight back and turning. This is Wind Blows the Willows. We find the complete process here. We're told that in Tai Chi, our movement is rooted in our feet. A lot around that today. Transmitted through our legs. Guided, directed, focused through that center part of our body, and expressed in our upper body and arms. This becomes our way of moving, a way that has movement, and flow of energy, to work freely through the body. Shake out. So on the other side, starting with fisherman cast a net, letting that wave flow through the whole of your body, one unit, possibly massaging, easing those areas that feel a bit tight or stiff, following the pace, the pulse of the movement, letting your body resonate to that. Fisherman cast a net, and this time when you go forwards, turning into wind blows the willows. Again, try and just recognise where it's appropriate for your arms to go without having to strain. Don't have them too high or push them out too far from your body. The idea is not to strain, but rather to feel that supple, fluid, almost elastic quality in the body. And we can combine this with the step in that we just did. So again, you go forwards or backwards, depending on where you have the room. I'm going to go forward, so I go into my front foot, I push my back knee in, bring the heel up, bring the foot in. Take the step and plant, move forwards, letting the arms drop, arriving in the front foot, pushing the back knee in as I turn. This is dragonfly skims the water. And what you may find, and don't do this if it's uncomfortable for you, that having brought the foot in, you can just raise, rotate the leg. If you find that is making you feel very wobbly and tensing up, it's better just to keep the foot down. You could just, for instance, bring the foot in, turn it like that. In time, you'll feel more confident to raise the leg. I'm going to change direction now. Remember, planting the foot. And bringing your feet parallel. Shake out. Lovely. So I would love to be able to claim that I can always feel centered, grounded, calm, still, regardless of the situation. It would be a false claim. And this is true for all of us, I think. We lose these qualities, but I've talked about how we might get them back. It becomes an intuitive process. This last exercise is called Embrace Tiger, Return to the Mountain. So it really focuses us on that process of returning. Well, one thing we can do with this, and it's a useful exercise, is to just notice what brings you back. Not what works for me, but what works for you. It could be any one of a number of things, but what would be useful to you a bit later in the day, perhaps when things have got a bit hectic. And you feel as though you could just be reminded of that feeling of being grounded, of being centered, of being still. So in the parallel stance, hips drop down, pushing up. This is the Embrace the Tiger. As you bring your arms around, so you're going to hold a ball against your chest, letting your hips drop, feeling your arms drawing in, and then back to the ground, back to the mountain. So maybe the image of the mountain or a sensation in your body. You might want to use our breath. So you could, for instance, you don't have to keep to a breathing pattern. But if as you draw your hand in, you take a breath in, then you get this sort of almost a sighing breath, helping you to release a little bit. Many different things that might be useful to us later in the day. One more time. And stand. Thank you very much for joining in, everybody. As always, please get in touch with me if you have any questions or comments. But enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.
Thanks, Mark.